Welcome to our third video on digital diagnostics. In this video, we're going to be learning about how to take good photos with just using a smartphone. Before we get into the different tips and tricks and good practices for using your smartphone when taking diagnostic photos, we're going to talk a little bit about why a cell phone is so useful in taking pictures. Well, the first thing is most people already have a smartphone. And in addition to that, it's really easily portable. You can take it with you. So if you're taking pictures on the go, out in the field, in your house, you'll likely have your cell phone with you. It's also very user-friendly, and the camera often has auto functions that allow you to take better pictures without having to adjust any settings. And even better, you can easily share your photos directly from your device, whether it's by email or submitting to an online diagnostic system. And another cool trick that a lot of people don't realize about their cameras is that it can also automatically record context details for you. And what do I mean by context details? Well, the main thing is the location of where you took your picture. Many phones can be set to automatically record this information if you'd like. And if you're anything like me, I take a lot of plant photos, I take a lot of specimen photos, and sometimes I don't remember exactly where I took them, but I can easily reference my GPS data associated with the photo to be able to include this information to give more context to my photos. Now that you know the benefits of using your smartphone for diagnostic photos, we're going to get into some tips and tricks on how to take good photos using your smartphone. The first tip I have for you is to make sure your lens is clean. And this could be the lens itself, or if your case on your phone has a lens cover as well. So this picture is a really good example of that, where I had recently been cooking and then I went to take a picture of some damage on this plant, and I realized I probably had some kind of oil from cooking on the lens of my phone. And the picture on the left here, you can see is blurry. It's hard to really tell what's going on, but once I cleaned my lens, you can really easily see what's going on with this plant. And similarly to cleaning your lens, it's good to have a clear shot of what you're trying to take a picture of. So you should avoid taking pictures through a screen or, say, a dirty window. And you can tell here the difference between two pictures. One, the picture on the left was taken through a screen, and it's kind of hard to see the details of this plant. It almost looks like it's blurry, like in the last slide. But the picture on the right was taken without the screen in front of it, and you can very clearly see the plant in this photo. We mentioned zoom when we were talking about magnification in our last video, but it's important to understand that zoom may not always be the best choice for when you're using a smartphone. And that's because the camera on your smartphone doesn't have lenses that can change distances very well. So the zoom on your smartphone might just be making your picture bigger rather than changing the distance of the camera lens to your object. For this reason, you can get a kind of granular or blurry appearance in your pictures when you're using zoom versus just getting closer to your object. So the example I have here is a plant where on the left, I used the zoom function, and on the right, I just got closer to the plant leaf. And you can see the picture on the right has a much more clear image for what we want to be looking at on the plant. As we talked about in our last video, light source can be an important factor that changes the quality of your photo that you're trying to use for diagnostics. In this case, sometimes with a smartphone, a flash is not always the best source of light for taking a photo of your specimen. Some of the reasons for this is that it could reflect light oddly on your specimen, especially if your specimen is shiny, or if it's wet at all, it'll reflect light and make the details of the specimen hard to view. Additionally, this flash creates a directed light source that'll have shadows in certain areas on your specimen, which may make diagnostic characteristics that we are looking for harder to view as well. So the photo here was on the left was taken with flash on, and you can see this intense shadow that's created behind the insect. It also obscures some of the colors because of how reflective and shiny the insect is. And you can see on the photo on the right, you can see a little bit more of those colors and the variation in the wings along with the wing venation on the insect. And the background isn't reflecting as much light as well. So again, this may take some playing with, but I would definitely start with a more natural source of light before you start using a flash or any other artificial light sources. The next thing to consider about your photos is how you take them, whether or not you use an object or a stand in order to steady your hands. Although I like to pretend I have the most steady photography hands in the world, sometimes it's hard to get a good shot without bracing your elbow or at least bracing the phone on something to be able to take a good photo. The photo here on the left was taken without bracing my hands, and the photo on the right was taken with bracing my hands on the table. And you can definitely see the difference in the clarity of the image between these two. Most smartphones have built-in features that allow you to quickly adjust your photos while you're taking them. And for example, one of the main features is if you tap on your object in the screen of your phone, it can allow you to focus better on the object. So for example, in the photo on the left here, I didn't tap on the screen to enhance the focus of the object. So for this one, you can almost tell that the focus is more on the background because the plant itself is blurry. And in the photo on the right, I tapped on the plant, what I want to get a good picture of, and the phone auto-focused onto the plant itself. So you get a much clearer picture of your specimen that way. Much like tapping the screen to focus, there's usually a quick way to tap the screen and adjust with a sliding scale the exposure of your photo as well. So for example, I didn't adjust the exposure on the photo on the left, and you can see that the plant is pretty dark and it's hard to see the details of the plant leaves. But I did use this exposure adjustment function on the phone on the photo on the right, and you can really see that nice pattern in the swirl of the leaves. So now that we've gone over some basic tips and tricks, we also want to talk about using magnification in your photos. There are some quick and cheap tools that you can use to help magnify your images and get a better, clearer, more detailed image of your specimen. And for example, one of these is using hand lenses, where you have the phone and then you put the hand lens close to the lens of the camera and take a picture through the hand lens. This is cheap, it's easy to use, but there are some downsides to this, and it mainly has to deal with you need two hands to hold your lens and one to hold your camera, and both have to be steady in order to get a clear photo out of this. Another really easy to use tool that can help with getting better magnification for your diagnostic photos is a phone clip that has a magnifying device or a macro lens. And these are relatively cheap as well to find. You can get them for as little as $10 online, and they're really easy to use. And they offer a little bit more than what a handheld hand lens would. So for example, you can see my phone here. You clip it directly onto your phone, and it even works if you have two cameras, the dual cameras on some of the newer phones. So you put it directly over that lens, and it clips on really well. And the difference in this is that I have this second hand free to help steady how I'm holding the phone to take a more steady and clear photo. We talked about bracing ourselves earlier in this video to get a better photo, and this would allow me to do this a little bit easier, so I don't need to have the lens held really steady as well as the phone. I just have to focus on the phone. And I can show you on my screen here, sometimes it takes a little bit of adjusting to get the circle to be perfectly in the center, because that circle is where you want your specimen to be. And you can see a photo of the device on the slide here. It's quick, it's super portable, it's really tiny and easy to take with you out into the field, much unlike camera equipment and more heavy duty kind of photo equipment. But in our photo here on the bottom, we have the same specimen that I tried to take just using my phone. And because it was a fairly tiny specimen, I couldn't get the phone to focus in a way that you could actually even tell it was an insect. And then the photo on the right is a photo taken with this macro lens that allows for a clear enough photo for diagnostics of a really small insect specimen. And the last thing I want to mention here is, as we've seen in some of the other slides, you don't need a microscope to take good photos close up of insects and other plant pathogens, etc. But if you do have access to a microscope, you can easily use your phone still to take pictures through this microscope lens. The advantages to a microscope is it often has much higher magnification, so you can get more detailed photos of very tiny spots or tiny parts of your specimen. But a lot of people don't have access to a microscope, and sometimes they require special skills to be able to use them properly. So as we've talked about in this video, if you don't have access to a microscope, it's not something to fret about. You can still take good diagnostic photos without access to this kind of equipment. So that brings us to the end of our video on how to take good photos using your smartphone. So in this video, we've talked about why we would use a smartphone for taking diagnostic photos and talked about some tips and tricks to get better photos using our smartphone. In our next video, we're going to change things up a bit and switch over to using a point and shoot camera, another common camera that people might have available as a tool to take diagnostic photos. So thanks for joining.